Meanwhile, singer Kelly Khumalo's lawyer, Magdalene Monsami, has warned against the alleged intimidation of witnesses. It follows defense advocate Malisela Defus claims yesterday that he has a witness who will testify that the celebrity mistakenly shot Meyiwa. But defense attorney Timothy Tobani has hit back at Monsami.
It means that they must intervene. They must call Monsami and they must stop her from what she's doing. At the end of the day, that is unethical of her, and that's defeating the ends of justice.
She's also indicated that she'll be bringing an application to challenge the assumption that Kelly Khumalo is the one that shot Senzo Meyiwa. Have you received any communication from her?
You know what? Whatever she wants to do about that is up to her. But here we are sitting in court, and we need to protect the integrity of the court. Whatever happens in the court is in court. If she's not happy that she was taken out of the court, she must make appeal or lodge a motion application. That's it.
All right, let's take you now to Linda Mnisi, who's been tracking that story for us on Newzroom Afrika. We're also joined by legal analyst Advocate Modidima Mannya. Linda, let me begin with you and get into today. You know, yesterday we had an almost exacerbated Sergeant Mosia begging literally for this cross-examination to end. That was yesterday. Today was an even tougher day for him in that witness stand because the real cracks in as far as the police investigation are being unearthed.
Especially because he was the one person who collected crucial evidence, despite the delays that he experienced before getting to the crime scene. I mean, what did he then recover when he got to the crime scene? And those pictures, where did he store them? The big question around where the original copies of those pictures are became the first part of that particular testimony. You'll remember he said that he only took about 8 pictures and then left and came back. So there are separate pictures before the court, Exhibit A and Exhibit B. The first part are the ones where he took them. So now the big question around where the original pictures are remains unanswered, because he says, you know, he did not even know that they were booked out and for what reason, which then brings about the question from Advocate Mshololo, could there have been tampering with those pictures? Because you can't at this particular point prove that in fact, you know, you have the original of the copy that were out of your control.
What is Advocate Mshololo saying? Is she insinuating that the crime scene, as it was on the night that this murder took place, is not clearly represented in what has been submitted before the court, and that there may have been opportunity to go back to that house, take pictures, to recreate a scene that is now presented before the court as evidence?
In fact, to use her exact words, today, Advocate Mshololo saying that the reason why he did not reveal certain information during his evidence in chief is because when he got there, certain evidence was not there, which then means it was planted. He was asked about the bullet fragments that he found in the house and when exactly he found them. He said that, well, he did not record the time, but you know, it was just shortly after midnight when he had secured you know, the scene. But now, where is it in the register? He says, well, he did not take the pictures you know, of those particular exhibits and registering them. It took about 2 days for him to register everything that he found in that particular scene, because he says he kept the exhibits in his personal safe, because the person who was supposed to register them was not available. So he only took 2 days to then come back and register them on the 28th of October at 8:30 in the morning.
Advocate Mannya, it's not a coincidence that we see the lawyers for the suspects here laboring the issue of the collection of evidence and that crime scene. It's central to the state's case and, of course, any prospects of securing a conviction.
Yes and no, Kathy. As you noticed, the story keeps on developing. And a version was put to the witness yesterday about who is actually the person alleged to have pulled the trigger. And by the way, for instance, in a murder case, what needs to be proven is the killing, who committed that killing. And if there's going to be evidence of who killed, who pulled the trigger, and that evidence is accepted by the court, the issue of the crime scene may just be a secondary issue now. At the same time, yes, in the sense that if the crime scene was tampered with, that may influence the decision of the court on how it accepts the integrity of that evidence. But let me say at this stage, Kathy, that we are at the very beginning of this trial. And it's not even possible at this stage to formulate a coherent view about which direction this will take. And there are so many things emerging that still needs to be interrogated and dealt with in court.
It's such an important point that you're raising, and in fact, Linda and I spoke about it yesterday, because as the case develops, both sides are going to have the opportunity to call up witnesses that they believe will strengthen their arguments in this matter. But ultimately, when it comes to this issue of the two dockets, how difficult do you think that's going to make life for the state?
You see, Kathy, this is where I think at the end of the day, and your colleague asked me this question the other day, how do we know that the people who have been arrested are the right ones? Now, remember, it is the state which must prove the case beyond reasonable doubt. So, amongst others, the state is required to place the accused at the scene of crime or prove their participation one way or the other. Now, that is where the whole crux of the matter is. It's not for the accused to prove that they are innocent. It's for the state to prove that they are guilty. Now, the two docket story seems to be part of the broader challenges that the police seem to have faced. What we have not been told yet is what was the status of the second docket. We know that it existed, and I think probably part of the evidence will deal with the second docket at some point.
Linda, let me bring you in here on this issue of the second docket, because while we had these proceedings take place in court, we've also had the legal representative of Kelu Khumalo coming out today to say that they'll be filing submissions before this court to find out, what exactly it is about the second docket that they've not been told of and what is contained in it.
In fact, Advocate Modidima, who's been relying heavily on this docket, says that at some point there was an appetite from the DPP in Gauteng to prosecute, the suspects in that particular docket, being the likes of Longwe and everybody who was in that house. But it suddenly stopped with no particular reason in terms of why exactly they decided to stop. We now have the 5 men before the Pretoria High Court standing trial. But you would have heard also Magdalene Munsami, the lawyer for Kelu Khumalo, saying the people in the dock in the Pretoria High Court were not identified by the people who were in the house. So the identification of the suspects who are in that dock was not done by the people who were inside the house to say these were the people who were intruders in the house.
Advocate Mannya, one of the things that we're seeing from the various legal representatives is that they are clearly aware of the public conversations taking place around this case. And one even gets the impression that, the contributions around this case, what they're saying publicly about it is to in some way add to the national discourse and perhaps ensure that there isn't just a single narrative that's out there.
Well, Kathy, I can tell you there's a person there wearing red robes. That is the national conversation. That is the person who will resolve the national conversation. I think the statements which are made, for instance, we know that some people have the theory that there's a mastermind, that now we have the 5 accused, then we now heard that one of the people in the house is the one that actually killed Senzo Meyiwa. Now, all those things can be said in public, but the public can express a view, or the lawyer says they are doing now sparring in public. But the real issue is the man in the red robes who is listening to the evidence, who will evaluate each and every aspect of the evidence, and who will make a determination. So whether people want to influence what the public thinks is irrelevant to what the judge will decide in the matter.
Linda, let's talk about the continuation of this cross-examination. Ultimately, we have the issue of Brigadier Ndlovu that has now become central to the evidence of Thabo Mosia. How is the court going to handle that?
We now know that Brigadier Ndlovu did not make a statement, of course, in this matter in terms of what could have happened when he arrived at the scene, because Sergeant Thabo Mosia found him there, and he's said to have been the one that pointed out the places where Sergeant Thabo Mosia was supposed to take the pictures. And it's interesting, Kathy, because you would have heard in that clip Sergeant Thabo Mosia conceding today that in fact he did not go beyond the points that were pointed out by Brigadier Ndlovu. Now, which begs the question around whether or not he was micromanaged when he got to that scene.
What does this mean for the future of the evidence, again, that is submitted and in some ways may need to be corroborated?
So you'll remember yesterday the Advocate Modidima Mannya was saying that one of the things that became apparent to them was the fact that now the state thinks that Brigadier Ndlovu is not central or is not a key witness in this case. But if you look at his contribution in terms of this case, he made a statement in the second docket and not in the first docket that now has the people who are facing the trial. So it'll be interesting really to see how the state will try to piece together the evidence, given of course what we've heard around his role and his involvement in of course the gathering of the evidence.
Advocate Mannya, perhaps just lastly on that point, I mean, how do courts deal with matters of this nature where there is crucial evidence needed by an individual, but that individual is no more?
Well, if somebody is no more, there's not much you can do. The trial requires evidence, and oral evidence for that matter, which must be interrogated by way of cross-examination in any case. So if Brigadier Buthelezi or whoever is said to be a key witness in the matter, if that evidence, if it doesn't help to join the dots, it will obviously have an impact. But as I said, it's not that every time a witness is caught off guard or whatever the case may be, simply means the evidence is discarded at that point. No, there's still a lot of evidence to be led. We don't know the other state witnesses that the prosecutors intend to bring. As I said at the beginning, that it is very early stages. So there might be things that crop up in the process. The defense has also, at least for the first to fourth accused, given a clear indication of what evidence they are going to lead. It may as well be that at the point that they require to give that evidence, that witness is unavailable for one reason or the other, and the whole game plan will change.
Advocate Mannya, let's wrap it up here and on a slightly lighter note. Can we get to the point where Sergeant Mosia is just like, I have had it, I'm done, I'm exhausted as a witness, and I simply cannot give any more meaningful contributions to this cross-examination?
Look, yes, witnesses do get exhausted, and if a witness is exhausted, he's got every right to point that out to the court. He will be given time to rest, but he cannot say, I will no longer testify.
All right. Advocate Mannya, let's leave it there for tonight. Linda Mnisi, who of course is a reporter that is tracking the story for us. It looks like they're still going to continue with Thabo Mosia. So no indication yet of who else the state is going to be calling up next, Linda?
Absolutely not, Kathy. You'll remember the state has been keeping and playing its cards very close to their chest. They've cited issues around, the safety of witnesses here. Even on the part of the defense, you hear, questions around who these witnesses are and what exactly are they going to say. But the defense is also not willing to reveal who those witnesses are. So it's going to be interesting, really, looking at the witnesses that will come.
All right. Let's leave it there for tonight. Linda Mnisi, Advocate Modidima Mannya, bring us the latest on that Senzo Meyiwa trial. It really does continue to dominate a public conversation.